Guys, today we're making history by going to the moon, using the magic of Lego stop motion. We'll be taking the most iconic moments of one of humanity's greatest achievements and recreate them as a Lego movie. Working tirelessly for the past 2.5 months, I designed and built a ton of Lego models and film sets, and took over 3,000 pictures to bring this Lego animation of the first moon landing to life, and to make it as detailed and scientifically accurate as possible. So buckle up, folks, and let's fly to the moon. Us humans have been wanting to go to the moon for a long time. Problem is that this dumb rock right there is 384,000 kilometers away from Earth. So in order to win the space race against the Soviet Union, in 1969, 400,000 American engineers, scientists and technicians worked tirelessly to build the beating heart of the Apollo 11 mission, the Saturn V. So let's begin with the first chapter of our journey to the moon, building our very own Lego Saturn V rocket. So here goes our awesome Saturn V model. And let me tell you, figuring this thing out turned out to be quite a challenge. Because there only being very few different cylinder pieces, made pulling off the original's proportions with Lego super difficult. But I eventually came up with this fake cylinder design, using these tiles that are held in place by snot bricks, with those smaller half-circle shaped bricks, enabling the plates to be directed in this fancy angle. Building this thing was also difficult for another reason, namely the Saturn V consisting of all those different stages. But now you might be wondering why we need all of those stages. Which brings us to the next chapter of our moon journey, the launch into space. The rocket fires the first stage for the initial launch to get off the ground, which is then discarded around 2.5 minutes alongside the launch escape system, which served the purpose of saving the astronauts should something go wrong during launch. The second stage then fires the rocket even further into space, until stage 2 is also discarded, with the Saturn V now chilling in the Earth's orbit for the next 2.5 hours. And after that, it's time for an epic move called the translunar injection. But before we're going to translate this crazy journey into a Lego animation, we of course have to talk about the 3 legendary astronauts manning the Apollo spacecraft: Neil Armstrong, Edwin Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins. And since one of the most iconic Lego themes happens to be Lego Classic Space, they of course have to be represented by Lego Classic Spacemen, but with a more modern twist. Except having all of them look the same would be boring. So I did the Lego Movie Bad Cop move, and with the help of a CD marker, I gave them some personalities. All of these are roughly based on this one picture, with Neil having this determined, "Oh yes, let's do this" attitude, Buzz just being chill and happy to be there, and Mike being more timid than the others. I also prepared some extra hats for additional expressions. I even made one that allows the minifigures to blink by swapping the hat between the frames. And lastly, I gave the figures differently colored gloves, so you can always tell them apart during the finished movie. And with our crew and rocket assembled, we can finally do some animating. So our animation journey starts 3.5 hours before launch, with our brave astronauts suiting up and later leaving the crew quarters, with these 2 memorable moments of walking through the hallway and then towards the bus that takes him to the pad elevator, which lifts them up to the Saturn V cockpit. And oh boy, those shots are already a hassle to animate. I started off by building the hallway that our crew would walk through, for which I cut out some rectangles into the ceiling to mimic the light panels above. The rest was just a matter of animating the 3 figures walking forwards, which is a horrendous chore in stop motion, because slow and steady movements require a whole lot of frames, which equals a whole lot of time. And the walking marathon immediately went on with the next shot, with the figs walking towards their bus ride, with there not only being even more walking, but also a bunch of paparazzi camera flashes, which I made with the help of this small extra light that I turned on every other frame to create a flash effect. So after 3 hours of animating, I completed this wonderful 6-second shot. Nice. Next up is the elevator ride to the top of the rocket. And I obviously don't have the time to build an actual working Lego elevator, but I've got a few tricks up my sleeve to animate the elevator ascent. I placed all the figures onto this 8x8 plate, which I then elevated further and further by using an increasing number of bricks and tiles stacked underneath the plate, which made for a seamless elevator ascent. And with the help of a webcam and my beloved, literally Lego rig, that allows me to easily raise and lower the platform in the front, I stitched together a super neat POV shot from the perspective of the astronauts sitting inside the elevator and watching the rocket while traveling upwards. And lastly, I built a cockpit inside the top layer of the rocket, the command module, also known as Columbia, where the astronauts will be sitting for most of the mission. And as always with stop motion, only build what the camera can actually see. Oh, and before I forget, you obviously can't have a moon mission without all of the guys in a chair sitting inside the control room, who make sure everything during the mission is going according to plan. Awesome, now all the engineers, technicians and astronauts are ready to start the mission to the moon. And this mission is going to be super dangerous. So smash those like and subscribe buttons for good luck, or the rocket will crash, and it's gonna be your fault. So make sure to watch till the end to find out if the astronauts safely arrive on the moon. Okay guys, and now it's finally time to animate the liftoff of the Saturn V. But this is the point where I realized that I also had to build a launch tower for the rocket. The thing is that this thing is so big that I don't nearly have enough pieces to build an according launch tower. So as a solution, I built a second Saturn V at a much smaller scale, meaning we're gonna use the big one for all the detailed close-ups and the small one for all the shots framing the rocket from far away. And with this smaller rocket built, it's time to build the launch tower. So this is our launch tower. I made sure to include details such as a rotatable top, and also those little thingies that can be withdrawn towards the inside when the rocket flies off. But because I'm an idiot, I forgot to use this feature in the final animation. Whoops. Alright, but how are we going to pull off this insane launch sequence with all this exhaust with Lego? Well, I started by building this absolutely huge film set of the launch site. This thing fills out most of my table, and I had to place my camera super far to the back in order to fit everything on screen. Next up, we have to find out how to make the Lego fire exhaust. Just for reference, the Saturn V rocket is higher than the Statue of Liberty and weighs almost 3 million kilograms. So the rocket had to generate 34.5 million newtons at launch to get into space. So our stop motion flames have to look absolutely mighty. However, I already encountered a similar problem during my old Spider-Man project, where I had to find ways to make stop-motion explosions, with the solution being the use of cotton placed above orange lamps, although for our Saturn V launch, we're gonna need a whole lot more cotton. I now place the main orange light in the back and use 2 of my tiny lamps for each of the sides to fill every angle with orange light. So with a ton of cotton placed in front of the lamps, this is what our full rocket exhaust will look like.
And this looks perfect, oh my god.
The animating process now consists of gradually adding more and more cotton with each frame, to make the exhaust cloud look like it's growing and expanding.
Oh my god, guys, look at that. This is amazing.
I also built the base of the launch pad at the scale of our big rocket, complete with those little fellas that hold the rocket in place, so we can do some super cool shots of the rocket lifting off the ground. And finally, the last piece of the puzzle for our launch sequence will be all the shots that view the rocket flying in the sky. If it was a small Lego character that I had to make fly, then I'd simply put it onto a rig and animate the background passing by to create the illusion of movement. Problem is, we also once again need to be able to animate large amounts of cotton for the exhaust, which we'll never be able to place in the air. But luckily, there's a secret animation technique that I've never used before, that perfectly allows us to pull off the exact type of shot we need. And this secret technique is multi-plane animation. With multi-plane animation, you use planes of glass to get whole new layers to animate on. So if we place the camera above facing downwards, we now have an upper layer for the rocket to chill on, where we can easily animate the exhaust, and a lower layer on the table where we can move along the background. The point with this whole idea falls flat though, is with the size of the glass plane. The largest piece of glass I own is this one from a picture frame, which is not quite big enough to fit the size of the rocket. So apart from screwing loose my house's windows, which would make it very cold in the night, I genuinely can't think of any other way on how to make those rocket flying shots work, so I guess all that's left to do for us is to accept defeat. Wait a minute. Yeah, as it turns out, my freaking glass lunch table is more than big enough to get the job done. So I upgraded my little microscale model to fit our large rocket.
Yeah, this is complete insanity.
But then I realized the glass is still very reflective, meaning that you can totally see the ceiling and my awesome Cars 2 poster that I got for my 7th birthday. Meaning I had to cover it up with some more fabric, making everything look seamless. And with the same thread for the rocket exhaust as before, I got to animating the awesome sequence of the Saturn V flying and also discarding the first stage. So yeah, using my table was totally worth it, even if it meant eating on the floor that day. Which means that we finally left Earth and officially arrived in space. But before we continue our awesome space adventure, a quick word from today's sponsor, which is me! Yeah, that's right, if you really enjoy my videos and want to further support me with a monthly tip, you can check out my Patreon and now also YouTube membership, where you can get some super neat bonuses in return. And in my Patreon shop, I'm adding detailed PDF instructions for my Saturn V, Launch Tower and Lunar module mocks from this video, so you can build them yourself at home, with every Viscount tier member on Patreon and YouTube getting them at no extra cost. Link in the video description. Okay cool, now back to the video. Up until now, every shot on Earth took forever to complete, simply because almost everyone takes place at a completely new set that I had to build, which took so freaking long. In space, on the other hand, there are zero complicated film sets, but instead just beautiful, calm nothingness. So all I had to do for most of the space shots was to set up my black fabric background and put all the rocket parts onto some brick-built rigs to keep them floating. And since most of the rocket space motions will be very slow and gradual forward movements, I placed the ruler on the table so I'm able to consistently move the rocket the exact same amount in the same direction each frame. So after getting rid of stages 1 and 2 and orbiting around the Earth, it's finally time for a translunar injection, where the third stage is briefly fired to leave the Earth's orbit to set course towards the moon. But afterwards we're gonna perform an even funkier move, where the top shell of the Saturn V is removed to reveal the Apollo 11 mothership, the Command Service Module, or simply CSM. We then have to do an epic 180 flip in space, to dock the front of the CSM with the now exposed top of the Lunar module, also called LEM or Eagle. This dorky looking combo is now gonna travel 97 hours through space, before Neil and Buzz switch over to the Lunar module and then dock it again, with Michael staying behind orbiting around the moon and the other two preparing to become the first people on the moon. All of these space shenanigans so far have been pretty straightforward to animate, with most shots just being pushing stuff around 2mm at a time. But then I got to animating Buzz and Neil switching over to the Lunar module, and since we're in the middle of space, they're not going to walk over to the LEM, they're gonna be floating. I started by building the hatch that will connect the two modules, that our astronauts are gonna float through, which turned out to be a really cool set piece. And as always, I used ball joint pieces to keep the figures in the air, but since floaty movements are always rather slow and delicate, getting them right in stop motion took a lot of trial and error, but I'm super happy with how this one turned out. So now that Neil and Buzz have entered the Lunar module, the time has come to depart from the CSM and to land on the moon. But shooting all of the different space shots has been a wonderful time. And so far we've only used this micro scale LEM, but we're of course gonna need one in minifigure scale. Figuring out this model was definitely the hardest build for this project, because look at this thing! I've never had to build anything with shapes this abstract and insane, but I'm super happy with how this one turned out. Now the time has come to finally land the Eagle on the lunar surface, with my lunar surface being just a bunch of plates and tiles on top of a base plate. But we're once again facing the problem of the LEM being far too heavy for any ordinary rig, which means that I had to get creative again, because a while ago this favorite swan neck light of mine unfortunately stopped working. But the swan neck part is still very much functional and happens to have the exact radius to hold the bottom of the LEM in the air. And with the lamp clamped onto a second table, I can once again use my height adjustable table to create the illusion of landing the Eagle. And with the camera set up in this fancy angle, after some animating, I can finally say, Houston, tranquility base here. The Eagle has landed. 4 days after launch, the time has come for Lego Neil Armstrong to take the ladder to climb off the LEM and to take the first step on the moon. But we're not ending the movie here, because we're still gonna explore the moon a bit. We especially can't forget about the moonwalk. No, wrong moonwalk! No, but for real, the moon exploring sequences were totally the most fun ones to animate for this project. There's just something really satisfying about the floaty movements in the low moon gravity. And as the final action before we conclude our movie, we of course need an epic shot of setting up the flag. Yo guys, I like this shot so much. You won't believe it, the sun is actually just a lamp hidden behind an extra piece of fabric with a cutout hole. It's so cool. Before it's time to say goodbye to the moon. So now that we're done with animating, there's still a bunch of post-production edits we have to do. Like the usual masking out of all the rigs, and also rulers this time. Some fancy color grading, but also some more nifty stuff, like building this dorky Lego Earth, taking a photo, making some Photoshop edits, and insert it back into the scene to make this awesome shot of the rocket floating in space. But when it comes to adding sound effects, this project is a little different. Because in space, there is no sound. So any cold silence is entirely intentional. And after the least cringe voice acting I've done so far, 2, 1, 0, liftoff on Apollo 11. Our Lego moon landing is finished. But before I show you the finished movie, I want to give a quick shout out to the Apollo in Real Life website, where you can have a look at the complete minute-by-minute timeline of the Apollo 11, 13 and 17 missions, which made researching all of the details for my Lego animation super convenient. It's even got all the existing original video material and photographies, and even a detailed list of every important milestone. You know, stuff like the liftoff, landing, Neil Armstrong offering Michael Collins some gum. Wait, what? So if you want to experience the moon missions on your own, check out this awesome website afterwards. Link in the description. But now, I'm happy to finally show you the finished Lego moon landing. Please have a look and enjoy.
seconds and counting. T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal. 12, 11. Ignition sequence start. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Lift off. Tower clear. Lift up on the phone left. Here we go! Downrange 1 mile, altitude 3.
Do you wanna... No. Mac? Yeah, I'd love one. Houston, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. I'm going to step off the limb now. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. Thank you so much for watching, you're an absolute legend for making it to the end. And now check out one of my other LEGO masterpieces. And also a huge thanks to all of my legendary patrons for supporting this channel, whose names are currently scrolling by. So that's all for today folks, see you in the next video, and as always, trust the process. Bye.